Hello, and welcome to In Your Prime. I'm Jana Collier, publisher of the Dayton Daily News, the Springfield News-Sun, and the Journal News. We're so glad you're with us for In Your Prime. We're out in the community talking to local experts to help inspire and empower you to live your best life. We recorded this program at the beautiful Cox Arboretum in Dayton, which is part of Five Rivers MetroParks, a wonderful resource for our entire region. And we also visited the Kettering Health Years Ahead Health Center in Centerville. The Southwest Ohio region is the perfect place to live at any age, but especially for us in the prime of our lives. We're eager to meet our guests, so let's get started. Hello, and welcome to In Your Prime. Today, our guest is Amy Dingle. She's the Director of Outdoor Connections for Five Rivers MetroParks. And she's going to be talking with us today about how we can stay active as we age, especially active outdoors. Amy, welcome to In Your Prime.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role here at Five Rivers MetroParks.
I'm the Director of Outdoor Connections, and my role really is to connect residents of Montgomery County with nature and healthier lifestyles, which has especially been important the last few years as we've dealt with our community's tragedies, right? The tornadoes, the mass shooting that happened in the Oregon district in Dayton, and the ongoing aspects of the pandemic, right? And so for us, it's really important for people to understand how the outdoors can help with their emotional, physical, and mental well-being.
So what kinds of activities are available in our area for seniors?
There's just a plethora of things for people around the area of all ages and generations, whether they're doing them together or individually. So our region is very rich with water, right? And so some may pause at this first comment, but getting out in a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard is really an awesome way to get outside and enjoy nature, do some bird watching. And some might think, oh, that's way too much for me. But actually, it's very gentle on the body, and there's lots of ways to get out, whether you want to connect with Five Rivers MetroParks, and we do try-its where you can just try something out, or take a class and do a progression of learning. There's also a lot of other outdoor retailers throughout our region that can do that. So a couple of companies that may be of interest for people is Whitewater Warehouse, Tomfoolery Outdoors, Surf Dayton, and Adventures on the Great Miami. Those are all great places for people to try it before they invest or go deeper into the sport.
I love that idea. I mean, it can be so expensive to buy a lot of equipment, and then you don't even know if it's really for you. So that's really wonderful to have that option to try it first.
Yes, it really is. I mean, it can be expensive, and it's intimidating. You're not sure if you want to try it. The other thing that's great to allow people to get out on the water is fishing, right? It doesn't take a lot of skill, although some would argue it does take a lot of skill to catch a fish and land one, but it's easy on the body. It's very great way to get outside in nature and view things. And you can use our rivers, you can use our inland lakes, and not everywhere needs a fishing license. So the way that maybe your viewers or listeners might know how to look for that, they can of course look it up on Ohio fishing regulations, but essentially any lake or pond or reservoir that doesn't have migration of another stream or for fish to get out, that's enclosed in itself, does not require a license. So Five Rivers MetroParks has several lakes where people don't have to have a license, where they can come out and enjoy fishing.
Wow, sounds like a really fun time, especially for seniors, I think. Yeah.
I think it is. And it's also really great for seniors or active older adults to get out with grandchildren or even their own children, right? And just to enjoy an activity that's kind of quiet and pleasant, allows you to absorb what's in nature around you, but also be active.
So I've heard a lot about the community gardens. Can you tell us more about those?
I would love to. Possum Creek MetroPark and Wegerson MetroPark both are spaces where people can purchase a plot for a nominal fee and do gardening, and you get soil and you have access to water right there on site. If you're interested in being closer to your neighborhood, we also help with neighborhood community gardens throughout the region. And so we provide tips and tricks on how to do things, but there's volunteer community garden coordinators that we can connect people with if there is a community garden near their neighborhood.
So I know that Five Rivers MetroParks is really known for its trails. Tell us about those kinds of opportunities for seniors.
Our region is so blessed with a plethora of off-road trails. We're actually the nation's largest paved trail network. We have over 350 miles of connected paved trail. So that allows people to get out that don't have to worry. They have access points all over the region to reach the trail. And they can get out on a bike. They can get out and hike on them or walk on them. We also allow rollerblades and other things, but it's a great way to see the region. It all comes back to our rivers, right? Where those trails were able to be put in place because of all the miles of river that we have. And it allows us to really be a special place to allow people to get out and exercise on a regular basis very close to their home.
Wow, 350 miles of trails. I mean, that's a lot. Is it throughout the whole area?
Yeah, it's through our whole region. It actually reaches further north than Piqua, and it connects all the way down to Cincinnati and all around. We hit Bell Fountain and Springfield, all through the Dayton region, everywhere. And really, you can almost drive within 10 minutes of your home and get to a trail access point pretty easily. So we don't have a full connected 100-mile loop, which is what we're going for, but we do have a lot of linear trail, and you can make connections between them to make your own loops. So great way for people to get out, whether they're on a bike, whether they are walking or hiking or want to get on wheels, whatever it might be. If they have mobility issues, they can also use our trails.
Wow, what a great resource, especially for seniors. So I keep hearing about geocaching. Tell us about that opportunity at the parks.
Absolutely. So geocaching is kind of like a treasure hunt, right? And the way that it's done is that people sign up through geocaching.com. You can find it on Five Rivers MetroParks website, which is metroparks.org. But essentially, it's treasure hunting using a global positioning system or a GPS, right? And it allows people to get out, or really, it doesn't have to be a GPS. It can be whatever navigational aid they want to use, but they're listed on a website. And the caches, the geocaches, what they are containers with little trinkets or things that you leave and take as you find them. And so you would use the wayfinding points to go discover where those are. And usually they're within a little ways off of the trail, just hidden, whether it's in a tree or a special place. So it is really fun, and it's a great activity to do with multi-generations.
So what exactly is a heart-healthy trail, and how's it different from other kinds of trails?
That is a really good question. So it is the same trail that's always been there. However, we've installed a kiosk that has some information about how to walk or hike at a brisk pace, right? And allow your heart rate to actually elevate. And we have markings along the trail every quarter mile so that you can track yourself and understand what your heart rate is as you walk that loop. And we have 8 around Five Rivers MetroParks installed in different parks, and we're hoping to continue to put in at least 1 or 2 every year.
That's great. What a great resource for folks in our area.
Yeah, it's excellent. I mean, we all want to be healthy, right? And get outside. And it's also a great way to just decompress and de-stress as you're out there enjoying nature. But some of them are on natural surface trails, and some of them are on paved trails. So there's a little bit for everybody depending on what their mobility issues are.
Now, when we think about the parks, I think a lot of time we think about using them in spring and summer. But are these things that we can do all year round?
Yeah, that's a great question. We love it when we see people out all year round. The outdoors is open to everyone, and actually as we come into fall, like we are right now, the bugs start to go away and the hotter weather kind of falls away and you get to enjoy all the color out there. And as we go into winter, there are great things to do even when there's snow on the ground. And so that's when you see migrating birds and where you can get out and enjoy snow. Whether it's taking the grandchildren to do some sled riding, or whether you want to get out and do something softer on the joints like snowshoeing or cross-country skiing, for example. Or if you're really feeling like you want to get out, you can visit Riverscape, MetroPark, and go ice skating.
How fun. Wow, there's just so much to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's just so everyone knows, you can do snowshoeing or cross-country skiing on any of our natural surface trails or paved trails.
Great. Well, I think we're going to take a question from a viewer. Here's the question from our viewer. With the luxury of more time on my hands in retirement, I want to get into a new activity, but I'm overwhelmed by so many options. Where's a good place to start?
Great question. Well, one of the best places to go is to look on Five Rivers MetroParks website, which is metroparks.org, and there is a tab on there called the Activity Finder. And the Activity Finder kind of lists all the different activities that we offer. It lists the programming that's associated with it. So if you're looking for a free Zumba class at Riverscape, or you're looking for a backpacking class, whatever the extreme you're looking for is listed. But it also lists kind of our partners and others around the region that offer similar types of activities. So if the schedule doesn't match someone for the time period they're looking for when MetroParks is offering it, maybe someone else is. And that's a great place to start, because there is so much to do in this region and in our parks. Another way to get out after, if you look at the website or you want a more mobile-friendly situation, is you can download the Outer Spatial app. And that's an app that has all of our parks and all the different outings, whether they're guided or self-guided, that are listed on there, that can help viewers and listeners get out on site, and use their phone to actually help guide them, which might make them feel more comfortable if they're in a new space that they're trying to explore. So that's a great way to get outside.
Great, the Outer Spatial app.
Yes.
I will download that and give it a try. So this Outer Spatial app, is it free?
Yes, it is. It's actually free. You can download it, and it has Five Rivers MetroParks listed along with other parks in the region that you can look at throughout Ohio. So it actually allows you to connect to many parks, whether you're traveling or staying in the region.
So do you have suggestions for outdoor activities that we can do with our children and grandchildren?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many things to do outside, and we really encourage people to get out with their younger people in their life. It's a great way to build relationships with each other, but also to showcase the importance of connecting to nature. And so there is just a plethora of things to do. I mean, whether it is getting outside and going to somewhere like Possum Creek, where we have a nature playground and restrooms nearby, and trails, there's a farm there where they can get out and enjoy that. Or whether it's wanting to go camping or picnicking. We have 23 different camping sites that you can get out and enjoy. The old-fashioned picnic in the park is always a dandy because it's unique, and our children today just don't have those experiences in the same way anymore. There's a Kids in Park trail that you can enjoy at Possum Creek as well. So if you go there for the nature play, you can get out on the Kids in Park, and that is just it's a national trail that is guides you through a series of activities with the kids to get out. You can also get out and garden with your children. And there are some great things on our blog. MetroParks.org has a farm-to-table blog that lets people know companion planting and different types of plants, but also recipes. So that can be really a fun activity that continues throughout the year with your children or your grandchildren as you get out and grow the food and get your hands literally dirty in the dirt, right? And then bring it all the way back into the table and make recipes with them. So, we encourage everybody to get out in the park and enjoy, sit and relax, whether they're being very active on a hike or whether they're just going and watching them play on a playground. We just want them to get outdoors and enjoy it, right?
So it sounds like the parks are great, not just for people of all ages, but for people of all abilities too.
Absolutely. We encourage everyone to be able to get outdoors and have access to what is comfortable for them physically and mentally. And so we try to have accessible trails in most of our parks. We also have lots of seating and areas for people to get out. The paved trail network that runs throughout the system is paved for that very reason, to allow different mobility areas. They're also extra wide for people that are in wheelchairs or that use walkers. So we do want to encourage everyone to get out, and we try to offer anything and everything that someone might want, but there's always the opportunity for comments from people too, and we welcome that.
Amy, thank you so much for joining us today on In Your Prime. I know that you have inspired our viewers to get out and stay active, especially outdoors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really look forward to seeing more people in the park.
Today, our guest is Rafi Rodriguez. He's the owner of Ask Rafi Retirement Lifestyle Solutions. And today, he's here to talk with us about retirement planning. Rafi, thank you so much for joining us today. It's wonderful to see you again.
It's good to be back, Jana.
So, retirement planning can seem so overwhelming to people, I think. Where do people even start with this process?
You know, I get this kind of question quite often, and what I like to do is kind of ease my clients and people that I know into a four-step process, may I say. And these topics are, for example, when to retire, also where to retire. Third, and just as important, is what money do I really need to enjoy the lifestyle that we really want? And what are the risks in retirement that I may be facing that I need to be ready for?
That's great. Well, let's break those topics down then. So, starting with when to retire, how does someone decide when is the right time to retire?
You know, this is one of the topics I enjoy talking with people, predominantly because when to retire depends on many different factors. For example, by the time I want to retire, am I eligible for a pension or a reduced pension? Or am I getting a buyout from my current employer? And then when do I qualify for Social Security, for example, and where would be the best time to take the Social Security? Also, what are some of the benefits that I may be losing from my employer that I may have to pick up on my own? A typical one is Medicare, which you have to be 65 to be able to enroll. And if you retire early, then you have to figure out how do you cover that gap between the time when you retire and when you qualify for Medicare. So that's a typical one. The second one, when we talk about where to retire, we have a lot of factors to consider. For example, what is the tax base where I'm at? Am I looking for a place where the taxes are lower, for example? How about the climate? Am I looking to a location where it's not as cold anymore? Okay. Just as important is the location where I want to retire close to medical facilities because I'm getting older and the knees start talking to me, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of factors. Also, am I going to be looking at a place close to my family or not? It all depends on the situation. How about recreational facilities in the area? Do they have enough activities for seniors, for example? And so you see the when followed by the where is so important. And another one that gets people's heads spinning is, where is the money going to come from my retirement lifestyle? If you have a pension, and remember, there's very few companies that do pensions anymore, how do you integrate that with your own savings, with your own IRAs if you have them, and how do you integrate that with Social Security? That is, synchronization is extremely important. Depending on when you take it, it could be good or it could be a bit of a detriment to your retirement income. Okay? So you could see already how many things we got to take a look at. And lastly, the risks in retirement. This is something that can really impact your lifestyle. For example, longevity. My concern is, have we made a concerted effort to take a look at our genes Are we here to be until 70s or 80s or even the 90s or 100s? Another risk certainly is public policy. Is public policy going to impact my retirement income, for example, changes in Social Security or Medicare? Another risk could be, how is the market doing? Am I retiring at a point where the market is high or where the market is low? How is that going to impact? And so forth. So there's quite a few other risks that we could talk about, but as you could see already, there's a lot of topics to talk about, because retirement is a stage where we had never been into. We have seen other people retire, but now it's my turn, and there's a lot to talk about and a lot to plan for. And retirement planning is something that we should start early, at least 5 to 10 years before you make that decision, so you have all the ducks in a row, may I say.
Well, that is a lot to think about. So how do you approach this with your clients? Where do we start with all of this?
Let's start with the end in mind, which is the lifestyle. And then what kind of monies from your either pension or Social Security or investments is going to cover the basics? Your home, shelter, and then what portion of these monies is going to take care of the fun things you want to do? It's almost like earmark accounts versus objectives, and that sometimes is harder for people to grasp, because they never thought that way. So it's quite challenging, but that's the first thing that we do: is what is the end point and how are we going to cover those expenses?
Yeah, that really makes sense. So, what are some of the mistakes that you see people make when they are, getting into retirement planning?
One of the mistakes that I see is they actually underestimate their longevity. And it's quite interesting, because I've seen some statistics where the male in the United States will last up to like 82, 83 years of age. And women is like 84, 85, maybe 87, depending on the genes, obviously. But the challenge is people over 65, 1 in 4 will lastly go through age in the 90s and potentially into the hundreds. So assuming that we have a plan and we think we're going to live until 70 or 80, then our assets or our resources can last so long. But if you're going to live a little longer, that money has to be stretched out a little longer. Plus, what is the quality of life that you're going to enjoy in those years? So there's a lot to think about, as you could see.
So what are the kinds of factors we should consider when we're thinking about the lifestyle we want to live after we retire?
Well, the lifestyle is something that is very individual dependent, but some of the things that we should consider is during that enjoyable time called retirement, what are the things that we want to do with the family, more time with the family? Do we want to spend some time with our philanthropic objectives, for example? Do we want to spend more time with our children or grandchildren, family time? How about traveling? As a matter of fact, early in retirement is when most people like to travel. So how much money should we set aside for travel to see the places in your bucket list? Also, certainly, health. I always bring health into the conversation because it's a major factor, especially financial factor, when determining the lifestyle. So all those kinds of things go together into determining what is the lifestyle that I will enjoy in retirement, especially fun stuff that you like to do, recreation, hobbies, maybe a part-time job just to keep you occupied. And when we talk about a second career, a part-time job, I always recommend my clients follow your passion. Maybe something different than your first career. Do something that gives you a great deal of satisfaction and will make you feel more fulfilled in your life.
So I think we're going to take a question from a viewer. So this question is about inflation, which is certainly something that we've been hearing a lot about lately. The question is this: how could today's inflation potentially impact my retirement plans?
Inflation is a major factor in impacting our lifestyle in retirement. One thing about inflation is not only that things cost more, but also if you have a plan to take money out of your investments while you're retired, you may be lured to take more money out of the investments than you should, and inflation many times impacts the portfolio and comes down. So there's a danger that you may be taking too much money too quickly while the account is diminishing in value, and you could potentially run out of money. So inflation is something that we need to plan for. A couple of things that we could do, for example, is if we do the synchronization that I talked about you earlier, is maybe delay Social Security. Social Security is a major factor in retirement. Another thing is maybe consider that part-time job, and also consider beefing up your emergency funds to take a look at and take care of the variability in your budget month to month based on the inflation factors. There's many things that you could have is a diversified portfolio, and even within your portfolio have inflation protected investment through U.S. bonds and things of that nature. But as important, is beefing up your emergency funds, because that's what's going to help you take care of the variability of your day-to-day budget.
Now, how important is Social Security in our retirement planning?
Well, Social Security is probably one of the strongest pillars for most Americans when it comes to retirement planning. It is intended to cover maybe up to 40% of the monies that you need in retirement. And it is something that a lot of people may think, well, should I take it early? Should I take it later? And the thing is, Social Security is very important. And I like to integrate the decision of Social Security with your retirement income needs and when do you plan to retire.
Well, we have a Social Security question from one of our viewers. So let's go ahead and ask that question now. The question is, I'm interested in taking my Social Security benefits before I reach my full retirement age. How do I calculate if it's worth it or not?
Well, that's a great question. The typical answer is it depends on your unique situation. And you did mention the full retirement age. Well, let's kind of address that here for a second. The full retirement age is the age when the Social Security determines when are you eligible to take the full benefits. Okay? Anybody that was born in 1945 or sooner qualifies for full Social Security benefits at age 65. From there on until I think it's in the 60s, then there's a almost like a ratchet date where you are fully eligible, and all the way to 67. And then anybody who was born 1960 and beyond is 67, and that's the full retirement age.
So what are the benefits of retiring later?
Social Security allows you to take benefits at age 62 at a reduced rate. And then at full retirement age, you take your full benefit. But most people are beginning to realize that if you wait until age 70, for each year that you wait from the full retirement age to age 70, there's an 8% increase in the payout year after year. So depending on your income situation in retirement, you may want to wait until age 70. And you may ask, so where is the money going to come from? It can come from your investments. Well, Social Security grows at a guaranteed 8% a year. Okay? But it's very, very important to figure out when is the best time to take the Social Security. And it is important to consider the age 62 versus your full retirement age, or age 70, which is the last time that you could actually apply for it. So Social Security is a very, very important aspect of retirement, and we should consider it very, very seriously. Now, from a Social Security perspective, if you take it early or you take it later, based on the mortality table, statistically speaking, you're going to receive the same amount of money. You take it early, you receive less monthly, but when you look at when is our end of life, or you took it later at a higher amount, it's all going to be about the same amount of money that we receive in Social Security benefits.
So you're giving us so much great information and insights. Are there actual tools that you recommend people use?
I recommend, for example, the Social Security website. A lot of good information that is vetted by the U.S. government. Okay, that's a good one. I also recommend the AARP for those who are members of that organization. There's a lot of good, valuable tools and exercises to give you hints about retirement planning. And also, as a retirement income certified professional, I have a lot of information for retirement planning or any other financial planning topics that you may need on my website, which is www.askrafi.com.
So I know we don't have fabulous beaches here in the Miami Valley, but is this a good place to retire?
Well, you'd be surprised. The answer is very likely yes. From an economic perspective, there was a study back in 2019 by 24/7 Wall Street that ranked the 50 states as far as how costly were they to retire. And it happens that Ohio is among the top 3 most affordable states to retire, with an average expenditures to live comfortably in retirement to slightly less than $40,000. Now, these are 2019 numbers, and with only less than 17% of the population over 65. So we have a relatively younger population in Ohio. But how does that rank with some of the other popular states? Well, the most expensive state is actually Alaska, where you need shy of 60,000 to have the same comparable lifestyle that in Ohio, about 40. And then the second next expensive state is Hawaii. They have the beaches, but you have to make a considerable amount of money to enjoy the same kind of lifestyle that we have here in Ohio. We don't have the beaches, but we have the lakes and we have the rivers, and that makes up for it.
And this is a beautiful place to live.
It is. That's why we live here.
That's right. I know this can get really complicated for folks, but what's another consideration for the timing of when someone should start taking their Social Security?
Yeah, that's a good question. The issue is the earnings test. The earnings test says that if you take Social Security early, let's say at 62, for every dollar that you make and you go beyond this particular threshold that Social Security determines, the Social Security will take out $2 out of your benefit. So check your Social Security website to double check those numbers because they change year by year. The second issue is, let's assume that you are in your full retirement year, but you're not there yet. Until you reach full retirement, the Social Security will take $3 out of every $1 that you earn until you reach full retirement age. Once you hit the threshold of full retirement age, there's no additional reductions. But that's very important because if you still want to work in retirement, you need to be aware of those particular reductions on something that you work so hard to earn your Social Security benefits.
So it sounds like there are a lot of things to consider when we're thinking about retiring. And this is not the time to do this alone, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And retirement planning can be not only stressful, but complicated. That's why, some people, I recommend if you want to check our website, go right ahead. Like I mentioned earlier, the Social Security website, the AARP, but most important, work with a certified retirement professional that can walk you by the hand on the different steps along the way. And as a retirement income specialist, that's what I do with my clients. I just walk them by the hand to ensure that we make the right decisions for the benefit just for them and nobody else.
Well, thank you so much, Rafi. This has been wonderful. I know this has helped so many people as they're thinking about their retirement plans. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here. Thank you.
This program is sponsored in part by Kettering Health.
You've always looked forward to the years ahead. Say hello to healthcare that's with you every step of the way. Primary care for 65 years and older, with imaging services, wellness checks, prescription and nutrition help. From caring providers that understand your needs and concerns. All of it at a pace and schedule that fits your lifestyle, because our focus is on you. Kettering Health Years Ahead Primary Care, helping you look forward to the years ahead so they can be your best.
Our sponsors make this program possible. Thank you to Kettering Health, Ask Rafi Retirement Lifestyle Solutions, and Five Rivers MetroParks. Today we're talking to Amanda Nichols. She's a nurse practitioner who specializes in geriatric care and chronic disease management. And today she's going to be talking with us about memory loss. So Amanda, welcome to In Your Prime. We're so glad to have you.
Hello, thanks. Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Kettering Health Years Ahead and your role here.
I'm a nurse practitioner who works here, and I think that the whole point of opening up Kettering Years Ahead was to focus on the older adults, 65 and older, and all their unique and diverse needs that they have when they get older, and to make sure that they're all addressed and taken care of.
I can imagine that this topic might be hard for people to bring up. How do your patients start the conversation with you about their memory health?
Honestly, a lot of them bring it up because generally a spouse or one of their children, you already said that, or I already told you that. Forgetting things, can't remember, something that conversation they had 10, 15 minutes prior. So a lot of it is people that are close to them in their network bring it up to them, maybe not just once, but multiple times, enough for them to address it here during the office visit.
So are there signs of memory loss that maybe they're so subtle we don't even notice them as they're happening?
It's not just maybe not remembering things. It can be just trouble with word finding, misplacing things, forgetting appointments. So it's not maybe just all has to do with memory. Sometimes their memory, might not be the first thing that they notice. So yes.
Are there ways that we can actually prevent memory loss, things that we can do proactively?
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence to show that exercise is very beneficial to helping, prevent or delay memory issues. So staying physically fit, staying active. There's also a lot of evidence to show that a heart-healthy diet plays a contributing role to memory loss, like Mediterranean diet. They say olive oil, eating fish, fruits, vegetables, all that kind of stuff. So yes, definitely exercise and eating healthy.
Well, that's great, because we have a question from a viewer that's right along those lines. So I'm going to read this question from a viewer. I've heard it said that exercise is the best medicine for the brain. Is that proven?
Well, exercise is shown to increase blood flow to the brain and growth of new brain cells. Even at any age, I tell people we can always gain strength, but it's always important to know that you have to be consistent with it. But I always tell my patients that exercise is free and there's no side effects. There's only benefits to it.
Are there exercises, things that we could do even at home that would help improve our memory?
I think walking is one of the best things you can do. Then you can also use light weights exercises that you can do at home, because weight resistant is shown to, boost brain health. And they recommend about 150 minutes a week of exercise. It doesn't need to be high intensity, just light to moderate. You should still be able to carry on a conversation with people, just enough to get that heart rate up.
And what about things like reading the newspaper or doing a crossword puzzle? Do those kinds of things help?
So interestingly enough, there's a lot of preliminary evidence to support yes. I think there might be some studies and research going on about that right now, but if it keeps people engaged, people enjoy doing it, then absolutely, I think it helps and they should continue doing that.
So are there apps, are there tools that people could use at home that would help improve and strengthen their memory?
There are several apps that have been created that are for memory health, boosting brain health, and some of those are, witty words, Lumosity, and then there's always my favorite, Wordle, that I do every day.
Love it, love it. So if someone's beginning to feel like they may be experiencing some memory loss and they come in, what's that experience like in the doctor's office? What's going to happen when they come in?
We sit there, we talk with them about, why they're feeling this way. It's always nice if they bring a family member or a spouse to kind of share some more insight. But honestly, there's some things too that we want to rule out, such as, depression. And then we always start with some blood work just to make sure that there's not an underlying thyroid issue, B12 deficiency, or anemia, or something along those lines that would be contributing, to what they feel like is an issue. they need a more thorough workup. So a lot of times we'll refer them on to neurology so they can have a full workup to get a diagnosis other than just being, that nonspecific dementia diagnosis where they don't have a true diagnosis. So that's why we refer them on for them to get more answers.
And so how early should someone start talking to their doctor about this?
I'd say 70s, early 70s. Most memory issues or even the diagnosis of early stages of cognitive issues, dementia, they get delayed by 6 or 7 years for whatever reason. So a lot of people, once, it gets addressed or comes to the forefront, it's not early, it's usually more advanced. So I guess I think people do, I think if it runs in their family, then they're more concerned that it may affect them. But unfortunately, it's chronic and it's progressive. So as far as, just I guess making sure that they implement it in every day to maintain, which I think honestly is the biggest goal, to keep people where they are, maintained, and doing well.
So can memory loss be reversed?
Well, that depends. I guess what is the cause of the memory loss? Is there something we can fix? We can fix thyroid issues, B12 deficiency, or anemia. We can hopefully, if there's an underlying depression, we can manage that as well with medication or therapy. But if, unfortunately, it's a chronic progressive disease, so the goal is always to maintain, keep them in their home, in their environment, and as long as possible.
So that's great. Take action to come in, talk to a doctor if you're experiencing these symptoms.
Definitely.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today on In Your Prime. This has been so helpful, and I know it's helped a lot of older adults. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our guest today is Jared Mueller. Jared is a licensed independent social worker practicing at Kettering Physician Network Behavioral Health. And he's here today to talk to us about how we maintain good mental health even when we face life's challenges. So welcome, Jared, to In Your Prime.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today and just be together in our community.
Great, thank you. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in this.
I tell my clients, I knew I wanted to do this when I was 11 years old. And so that really does bring us to today's topic is, how do we have good mental health despite what's going on around us? It's so easy to focus on what's going on outside of us. But for me, all of my life has been about, no matter what's going on, what can I do? What do I have power over? And it's really something I'm really passionate about.
So, are there specific kinds of mental health challenges that older people in particular face?
Yeah, absolutely. The clients here at the Years Ahead Health Center, we get a wide variety of people who are really looking at those changes in life, whether it's just life turmoil, retirement, obviously grief and loss can be a huge part. And in a lot of ways, what really is the struggle is, what is my identity? I have been doing or being this for so long, and now it doesn't exist, or I'm not doing it, or I can't do it. And so it can be so easy, as we go through those transitions, to really focus on what used to be, right? And so, unfortunately, struggles in mental health are when we start to spend our energy, our limited time, our limited emotions, those resources, we can start to spend them on our past and what used to be, or how I used to be, and or even on our future, what might happen. But unfortunately, that tends to kind of waste those valuable, precious resources that we cannot get back, right? So alongside money and everything else, time, energy, and emotion, it can be so easy to waste those.
Wow. So how can we decide how to best invest our time, energy, and emotion?
Really, it's focused on what is available to me. Where do I have the power? Where do I have influence? What am I good at? And so really, it's the question of what can I do, right? Looking around me and saying, okay, I'm really passionate about this. So I'm going to, whether it's go volunteer, whether it's write a letter, whether it's support financially. But it's also just about how we're spending our energy and our time. What are we planning for? And so what am I watching on TV? What am I making sure I actually do? If I find myself going down those old paths or worrying about the future, how do I draw myself back into something today? It's an oversimplified thing, but what you feed grows. Our brain is really lazy at some level. And so if I feed it worry, if I feed it wishing it was the way it used to be, well, that's what it's going to want. And that's what it's going to bring up. And that's what's really going to grow. But if I feed it positive music, right? If I feed it comedy, if I feed it thinking about things I'm looking forward to, if I feed my brain all of those things, then the great thing is that's what my brain's going to want to think about. That's what my brain's going to want to repeat. And so it puts all the power back in our hands. What I feed today is more likely to grow tomorrow. And so I want to help people, and I want people to help themselves really spend their energy on what they want to grow and let the other stuff atrophy away. If I can't do anything about it, it's good to know, but beyond that, I need to keep my energy, keep my time, keep my emotion on the things I really do want to grow.
Yeah. You know, we're in the news business, and we have lots of, good, wonderful stories that we tell, but there's also, there's bad news out there, right? And sometimes it can just feel like gloom and doom is everywhere. How do you help people focus on the things that really matter and stay away from those things that really drain their time, energy, and emotion?
For me, I always encourage proactivity. We can be so reactive in our world, especially as we get a little older, our time constraints really get freed up, right? So if I'm no longer working or I no longer have other responsibilities, all of a sudden I have a lot of time. And so that time can all of a sudden feel like, I can do almost anything. And so I'll just wake up and figure out what my day is going to look like. But unfortunately, with all the doom and gloom, with all the negative stories, which is why programs like this are so important, right? We need to give the same energy to all the good stuff. With all that negativity, it's so easy to just reactively wake up and go on doing what we have been doing. And so being proactive is a really healthy way for us to say, what am I going to do? I always talk to people about having options. So if I start to struggle with a thought or focus on the media, what are my options? What am I going to turn to? What am I going to turn it off and turn on the radio? Am I going to turn to a specific station or channel? Am I going to call a specific person? So always knowing what my options are, but really looking ahead at my day and saying, this is what I want to grow today. This is what I want to grow this week. And I'm going to put it into my life. If it's important, I'm going to make sure it's a part of my life. And then as I go to bed at night, I review how I did today, and then I plan tomorrow, right? So it's not saying these simple things are going to, snap our fingers and solve things, but just like growing anything, it takes time, right? My amazing wife has told me before, she didn't know she was being so profound, but she said, Jared, time is an important ingredient in any recipe. And I was blown away by the depth, and she was like, no, if you pull it out too early, the brownies are runny, and if you leave them in too late, they're burnt. I was like, no, that was way more profound than anything. You're talking about brownies, right? So, it's going to take time. It takes that consistency. It takes building these new habits. The great thing is, after we've been proactive and really built these habits, then we can get a little lazier and be reactive, because then our brain wants that good. Our brain is now trained for that good, as opposed to that doom and gloom.
Wow, that's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to take a question from a viewer. I recently retired, and although I was so excited to finally be in this phase of my life, I'm finding that I feel lost and without a sense of purpose anymore. Is this normal?
It is absolutely normal. And so work, when we talk about how our brains actually function, work is primarily a cortex piece of your brain, which is problem solving, functionality, all of that kind of stuff. And when we retire, all of a sudden, we don't have a lot of problems to solve. We have some, but they're not as day to day. I got to get to work on time. I got to fix this. I got to do this. I got to answer to this boss. So all of a sudden, the part of our brain that we're really used to using a lot isn't being used. And so it's from a biological perspective, it's normal. And then just from a person perspective, in a lot of ways, we live in a world where our identity comes from what we do, not who we are. And so as we retire or as we transition, who we are has to become more important than what we do. And so who I am as a friend, as a family member, as a community member, for those who have spiritual beliefs, a part of their spiritual community, that identity has to come from who they are and then living that out, right? And so if this is who I am, how do I live out who I am? Because I have value, right? And so if I've been working in the community and I've retired as this listener, then I have to use that. Look for opportunities to train others, to tell the stories. There is so much value that those that have life experience, I can learn so much. But they have to teach. They have to talk. They have to be available to me so I can learn from them. And so knowing that you have value, knowing that there's more to your life than just your job, that all of those other things bring a ton of value to our community. And so really focusing on that is huge, but it is a normal piece of the puzzle because now we're going to be a little less cortex, and then our midbrain is more about relationships. It's about experience. It's about being who you are. Well, that part of the brain, when we're really busy working, it's the weekends, right? It's here and there, it's vacations. When we retire, we're going to kind of shift and start using more of that part of our brain, and this part of our brain doesn't get as much use. So that is a transition. It's like one of the homeworks I give my clients. It's like putting your pants on with the opposite leg first. It seems simple. Go ahead and try to do that. You may fall over. It may feel uncomfortable because change is really difficult, but that's really that transition from retirement, from working into retirement really is about using that different part of your brain.
So are there activities that people can do to help stabilize their mental health?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say is to look at their life we call it the 5 domains of life. So there's 5 areas that really make up who we are, and it's really important we value all of them. And so spiritual, social, emotional, mental, and physical, they're all intertwined. And so it's important that we make sure we are emphasizing all of those. And so there are lots of ways, no matter what your spiritual belief system is, to really connect to spirituality, whether that's going down to the Cox Arboretum or just being in nature, for those who are Christian in the scriptures and being in community and those kind of things, making sure you're doing that. And the great thing about it is, if I'm in community, I'm also hitting the social aspect of my life. Some of the research tells us that the best midbrain, that emotion, relational brain, is in quality relationships with 20 to 30 people. Unfortunately, in America, we live in a society of privacy fences and back decks, not front porches. And so most people I talk to, especially those who are struggling with their mental health, are in relationships with 2 to 3 people. And so all of those areas, all 5 areas of your life have to be emphasized, even if you have some physical health issues, as I do. Unfortunately, my leg issues have caused 2 major scoliosis curves, and the top vertebrae in my neck has turned completely around, and all kinds of fun stuff. I still have to figure out how to be physically healthy and what can I do, right? Even if it's stretching, even if it's little movements. And so, from a broad perspective, looking at those 5 domains of your life, and as you're planning your day and planning your week, am I hitting those? Am I prioritizing those? Thinking about positive things, challenging ourselves, whether it's crossword puzzles, Sudoku, whatever it is, positive emotions, really engaging yourself in those things, social, spiritual, all of them. And then really from a physical perspective, while I wish we had a magic wand and I could say, if you do this one activity, oh my goodness, your mental health is going to be amazing. But what we actually know is there are some biological tendencies where we can use them to really help kind of calm ourselves, really at a brainstem level, which is kind of the third part of the brain. Much like toddlers will rock, we all have kind of a rocking rate. Now, as we get a little older, we learn we're not allowed to, it's not socially appropriate to rock. So instead, we've been in meetings, people are clicking their pens. That's a patterned repetitive behavior. Other people are bouncing their foot, tapping their leg, twiddling their thumbs. Well, those pattern repetitive behaviors are actually ways that your brain is trying to relax you, calm you, bring you kind of peace. And so we can actually use those things. So going for walks, literally twiddling your thumbs, tapping, there are a lot of different things, yoga, deep breathing exercises, all of them, while they can be healthy in and of themselves, really help bring our brain to some peace. Because unfortunately, the way that we are wired, if we are stressed out, our brain thinks we're in a life or death situation and starts to react and fight, flight, or freeze. And we need to relax that. And so some of those pattern repetitive behaviors, some of those very simple things, breathing exercises, can really kind of bring us that peace. Because again, what you feed grows. Even in those relationships, the one thing I want to discourage, venting, which feels really good, isn't really that healthy for us. Because the reality is if it's not a solvable problem, we are literally just spending energy on something that bothers us. Now, I can share with family and friends, had a really tough day, or I had a really great day. But in the end, we really want to spend our energy on the stuff we want our brain to kind of marinate in. And so marinating in what is good, having conversations about what is lovely in this world, the things that are challenging you in a good way, all of that really starts to lead us down the road to health.
I love that. Thank you. That is super helpful. So when should someone reach out for extra help, and what would that look like?
A lot of times we talk about when we see an impact kind of in their world in a way that is causing them even more strain. So when their mental health starts to cause strain in other areas. So whether that's in relationships, whether that's in jobs, whether that's in community, physical health, right? So if my depression is so bad that I'm eating or not eating, I'm sleeping or not sleeping, so when you start to see these emotional issues start to really impact kind of other areas of your life, are really going to be important to seek out other services. Being involved in your community, having those 20 to 30 quality relationships is actually, generally speaking, better for your mental health than coming to see a therapist. If I had to choose for anyone that's listening to this, I would say get involved is going to be number one. But the reality is sometimes we're already in a place where we need that boost, where we need that help. And a mental health therapist or a prescriber who would prescribe some medications for mental health issues can really help be that boost. And so our role, as a therapist, you come in and it's really about tell me the story, right? Tell me what brings you in, how did we get here? And then we really focus on how do we get you where you want to go. And so I always joke with my clients, while there are couches in my office, I'm never going to ask you to lay down and tell me your feelings. There are types of therapy that are really good about that. But for a lot of us, it's just how do we get you from where you currently are to where you want to go based on what you can do. We cannot change other people. It's hard enough to change ourselves. And so we really focus on what can you do, what can you do, what can you do. But instead it's about building that new habit, creating that new person that you want to become. And so therapy is really all about the client. The person that comes in, they really get to run the process. Therapy is about what the client can do for themselves. And it's really empowering them. And that's really what I hope from this that the listeners and the watchers have heard is, what can you do is the most important question. No matter what is happening around us, we can live in good mental health, good emotional health, good behavioral health. If we ask the question, no matter what has happened, given all of that, what's the best thing I can do for myself right now?
What wonderful advice. Jared, thank you so much for joining us today on In Your Prime. I know that you've helped inspire so many older adults today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching In Your Prime. And a big thank you to our sponsors, Kettering Health, Ask Rafi Retirement Lifestyle Solutions, and 5 Rivers MetroParks. Thank you for joining us for In Your Prime.